All right. We're live. What's up, Graham?
Hello.
So we're on Zapstream this week, but it pushed the wrong title. So we're working on it, guys, but we're getting
Oh,
we're getting on
nice.
all the platforms, but we're excited to be here. We've got some fun stuff to talk about, all the latest going on in Bitcoin and Lightning. But before we dive in, how's your week, Graham? What's new?
Whew, it's been a busy one, man. I think that things just keep happening, which is good. It's good to not have a stagnant space or things going on, but yeah, it's tough to keep up.
Yeah, busy week for sure. This is a fun one. Before we kick it off, I just saw a number online. I think Stephen Lubka from Swan was talking about it, but more
Hmm.
inflows into IBIT than QQQ and VOO this year. They don't hold more assets, but there's more inflows into it, which is pretty cool. Bitcoin's on hearts and minds across America.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's really interesting. I mean, I think it's been watching the activity of the ETFs has been like super interesting. I think from they launch and then like the FTX creditor dumps and things like that, and then now we're back to some significant inflows, and it's just interesting thing to watch.
Heck yeah. All right, guys. We're going to kick it off this week talking a little bit about Nostr Wallet Connect. So, this is pretty cool. Basically, the breakdown it's showing is a standard mechanism where different tools can talk and communicate with each other. And Graham, I would love for you to maybe just talk a little bit about what this means for applications communicating in just a better or cleaner way. Like, how would you go about explaining this to folks?
Yeah, I mean, like Nostr Wallet Connect is it's just trying to kind of solve the complexities of connecting different services. So that's kind of broad, and that it can be like connecting like to a Lightning node from your wallet, or maybe even I think it might even be able to connect into like some custodial solutions and things like that. So basically, continuing to mesh Nostr and the Lightning network, so it's just an easier experience overall. I think when previously zapping and all of those things were you sometimes had to, or in the early days you had to like go out to like external wallets and all these different things. So it's definitely interesting to see the continuing evolution of Nostr and Lightning and them coming together even more and more. So that's basically, I think, what this is for the most part. Is just an easier way for you to connect and mesh the two ecosystems. So it's a more unified experience and less of a these two kind of separate protocols, separate networks that you're kind of band-aiding together.
Very cool. And I I have a question on this because I don't really get too deep in the weeds on how all of this connects together by the lines of code, but I saw NVK share this how he's helping people in Latin America get connected with Primal app and it's bringing Nostr and Bitcoin and Lightning together like within an app. Like, is this one example of it? I don't know if they use Alby or not. And I know this is like an Alby thing, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Primal is an example of Nostr Wallet Connect because like they use like Strike in the back, so it's a completely custodial wallet inside of the Nostr application. Like their application has like custodial Lightning as well as custodial. It's not custodial Nostr. Like that's kind of like a weird thing, but so it's a completely custodial experience. I think Nostr Wallet Connect is more about linking into external wallets and things like that, but then also they might leverage it to do things like actually integrating contacts and things like that. Like Mutiny does a good example of like seeing all of like your Nostr contacts and being able to like zap them and things like that. So maybe they use a little bit of it, but I think it's not one to one like when you think about like Alby, the way that Alby uses it and whatnot.
got it. Okay. Well, very cool. Yeah, this is kind of exciting because I don't know about everybody listening and hanging here. Feel free to share in the chat if you've used Alby at all as a web extension. But I've been using Alby to log in on a lot of different sites, and it's nice just to like enter my password. Like I use it on Wavelake, use it on Nostr when I load Primal on the web. But I don't know. This is going to
Yeah.
be kind of fun and interesting. And I don't know, as far as it relates to privacy, before we move on to the next topic, I even saw in the news today that phone companies, whenever your information is compromised or they're hacked, they've never really had to disclose it to you. And now it
Mm.
has to be disclosed within a 30-day window. And I think why that's interesting is privacy and, people's security matters. And as these things move forward and it becomes more normalized and understood, like, hey, your information is constantly getting stolen, I think we're going to move to more encrypted ways in which we access services, like
Mhm.
like standard logins,
Yeah.
like, because every time someone gets your email, I'm sure you've gotten tons of spam from like all these different hacks and things that happen. Like, email is a very sketchy place to be in 2024.
It is. It's kind of funny, but I mean, it's true, and I think that I agree. I think that as it's one of those things where I think that people are going to start waking up and start getting fed up with constant data breaches over and over again, and having more privacy, more ability to control kind of who you share what data with, and also using things like Nostr to be able to facilitate a lot of that. So I think that it'll be very interesting to watch over the coming year or so. I think that it's great to see the continued development of Nostr as well, because for the reasons you just said, it's very valuable for as we look to exit a lot of the kind of traditional ways of doing things. It's very important. So it's great to see the continued development of Nostr. It wasn't just this kind of like it wasn't like an NFT where it's like this big, spike initially and then just a huge drop. It's continued where people are still actively using it and developing on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just moving on here, I saw Tony mention this. I know some folks gave him a hard time about not building for the App Store and building a progressive web app, but this is a thing where it sounds like if you load an app within your phone or your browser, it's like being cut off from certain resources or different things, and this is making it hard for app developers. It's like, and if I think Apple, from what I read, they were like enabling people to build for these side app stores or things outside the app store, but then they're like really heavily taxing you. Like, what's this causing in the development world, and like how is this kind of hindering some of the development of people building on Bitcoin?
Well, yeah, I mean, so as you look to develop applications, maybe specifically for a focus on mobile users, you have the opportunity of going into the traditional app store or doing things like a progressive web app, which is basically just like a website. You can save it on the home screen, and it basically functions much very similar to an application from the app store. But you aren't beholden to like the app store. The app store takes fees. They have a lot of like geographical restrictions. You can just be deplatformed from the app store at any moment. So progressive web app gives you a little bit more control. So that's why people like Mutiny kind of opted for that, is you have more control over like your applications, like distribution and all those different things. This is an update that Apple did that broke some progressive web apps. I think it's still like a little early to figure out what is the ramifications, like how big is this problem and where all does it touch. But ultimately, it sucks to see it breaking progressive web apps. And this is like the reason why it broke is they're trying to comply with these European laws about various things, and so it's kind of one of those things where I think Mutiny they've, like you mentioned, they've gotten a lot of flack for the ways that they've maybe some people their decisions are going one way or the other. Today they have it both in an app store as well as a progressive web app the last time I checked. And so this is like, well, why would you do all that work to do both? Well, this is the exact reason why, is that either one can break at any moment, and being able to have some kind of like not a backdoor, but an ability to still use the service even when things break, I think is going to be increasingly important. And so this is a classic example of why it is important to have kind of various multiple ways of doing things ultimately.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good job, Tony, and everyone on the team having the foresight to see that and try to make it better for your users. So that's interesting. Yeah, what were you about to say?
No, I was going to just finish it out with it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I would imagine they would fix this, because I mean, there's progressive web apps that aren't as like have like all of the negative connotations of Bitcoin and things like that. Like there's like the normal kind of experiences that use progressive web apps as well. So like I can't imagine Apple not fixing this. But it'll be really interesting to see it develop, especially as we they continue to comply with some of these crazy laws that are popping up, and then just what that'll mean over time.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. So you shared this over with me today. I'll kind of let you kick off and speak to this, but Link Wallet LUD, tell me a little more about what this is.
Yeah, so this is a proposal by Thunder Games, which I thought it was kind of interesting to bring up because basically this is in the LNURL repo for kind of the proposals and protocols of how LNURL works. With the problem that they're trying to solve here is everyone knows for the most part about Lightning address by now and how that's an easy way of like an email address looking thing that you can send money to via the Lightning network. The problem that they've been experiencing inside of their users is that people either don't know what a Lightning address is, they copy and paste it wrong, or they just manually type it in wrong. They don't know where to find it inside of these other applications. It's kind of very error prone because you're having to do this like back and forth of either copy and paste, find it, type it in, whatever. And so it's been kind of a challenging user experience to get someone onboarded into using a Lightning address for these various different reasons. So what they're proposing here is having a method inside of LNURL that allows you to easily link a Lightning address to a wallet. So for Thunder Games example, you would be able to click like have a list of wallets, and then click like add Lightning address like next to someone like Zebedee, and then it would kick you into the Zebedee app, and then you could in Zebedee just click like allow or something to allow the sharing of your address, which would then send it back over to Thunder Games. So it basically is a way of removing a lot of the user error associated with entering in a Lightning address, which for us, the Bitcoiners out there that have like, used this stuff, it's like, well, how hard can this be? But when you think about normie users that are just trying to, get some sats out of a wallet or something, it can be a little challenging or just different. They just don't quite understand the whole thing. So this is basically trying to make it as simple as you can just to link between two wallets.
Yeah, and this is pretty meaningful. I mean, from everything I've heard Desiree share, like something like 70% of the people who play on Thunder Games are not already Bitcoiners.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Yeah.
there's ever a landslide moment where Bitcoin has this big reason for adoption, not having little things like this that make the user experience delightful could hinder a lot of people having a good first experience with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point, and that's why people like Thunder Games are so important because they are interfacing with people that aren't in Bitcoin and Lightning every single day. So they kind of discover things like this that maybe to us it's like, well, I've never copy and pasted my Lightning address wrong because I know what I'm doing, but like there's a lot of people out there that this is completely new to, and so we need to make sure that we're satisfying those kinds of users because otherwise, adoption isn't going to happen if things are really hard to use. That's early days of Lightning. It was slow to adopt because everything was very, very challenging, and that's things that we and others are trying to solve. And so, if you got all these friction points, adoption is going to be very, very slow. So the more that we can decrease these hurdles, the better.
Yeah, awesome. So on there, we're covering a little bit with like Thunder, kind of maybe these microtransactions. We're going to segue to almost the opposite end of the spectrum. 1011. They said, "See you later, Mr. Lightning." And anyone who's not familiar with 1011, they're an early startup. I believe they were in Wolf cohort 1 or 2. I can't remember exactly, but they've recently made the choice to leave Lightning channels and replacing them with DLC channels. It sounds like, and they're a trading platform. So users are trying to move bigger amounts of money, but I'm sure you've maybe heard of different businesses and founders struggling maybe with like early stage using Lightning, but could you speak to this and maybe some of the challenges of, right here it's talking about route not found or forced closes, which I've heard people bring up about LND a few times. And then just some of the different reasons why Lightning may be a challenge for like founders or just early startups, if you could touch on that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll call out that it's 10.10.1. I think you're saying like 10.1.1, but it's 10.10.1. But they are we touched on them I think several weeks ago. I think when they first kind of announced this, but they released this blog post kind of outlining why they're moving away from pure Lightning and going into like these DLC channels. Honestly, I applaud them for it because it takes a lot of work and conviction to pivot your product in kind of in a way like this. So for one, I think that's great. I think that the problems that they like you got to kind of think about this. So one of the problems people have, like a problem in the ecosystem, is that people see headlines like this and they think, oh, like Lightning's dead, like it's not going to work, it's all broken, which is exactly like that's not the case at all. Think about their user base, what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it. Doing kind of these trades with small amounts of money via Lightning is probably not you're going to run into the issues that they outlined there of all these like force closes, doing pathfinding, like all these different things. And so I think for the use case is probably not like the original way that they were doing it is probably not going to be the most advantageous, especially when you think about high fee environments and all of these things. And so they're kind of adjusting into doing it in a different way, which is more DLC focused, which I think is the right path. If you're creating a DLC focused wallet, I think doing it in ways that is very purpose driven to what you're trying to achieve makes the most sense. And if you read in that article, halfway through, they're not done with Lightning. They're going to kind of bring it back in a different way and enhance the experience with Lightning. Just for the kind of the core product and way that they're doing DLCs, they are adjusting. So I think there's, I think that maybe people they hype up Lightning a little too much and it's saying that it solves things that it doesn't solve for. I think this is a classic case of something that, like, doing these new DLC channels is probably the better way. We'll kind of see how it all shakes out. And then adding in Lightning in different areas of the app is probably the way to go. And then just continuing to push forward inside of this DLC world. I think this is very interesting, especially amidst of Lightning or LN Markets having this new like DLC based marketplace. Well, it'll be interesting to see how they kind of approach the problem too. So ultimately, I think this is great to see them kind of pivot and focus in the ways that it's going to solve for their users the best. And it's going to be great when they're going to add Lightning back in, and it's going to still be, it'll be a great experience in the ways that when they use it in the ways that it shines the best. And so I think that it'll be really interesting to see how they kind of develop it out further.
Yeah. And, I always joke around the marketer is the Sultan of shilling. Well, this is also why we have the enterprise solution. A lot of startups, whenever they're building stuff out, like to use their language, I'll just shed some light on this. Many developer hours were spent chasing Lightning related bugs. Like a lot of problems that Lightning has now, like at Voltage, we're trying to offset that by helping manage some of this stuff for, potential users and clients. So, but I love what you said. Like we're at this stage where, we applaud them on maybe saying, hey, now's not the time for us to use Lightning, but they're trying to do big amounts of capital, and managing that over Lightning can be challenging. And traders like trading large amounts, very few people are trading like 100 or 1,000 sat amounts whenever they're moving money. But those are some good points.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, again, I'm really excited about the whole DLC space, and I think that it'll be really interesting to watch how these folks kind of develop and continue to roll with it, and the ways that Lightning is incorporated into it. I think it'll be really, really fascinating, and I'm confident that they're going to find the right solution and how they all mesh together. It takes things like this of doing real, developing an application and getting it into real users' hands, and then you find out what works and doesn't work, and then you adapt from there. So it'll be exciting to watch.
That's great. Also, nice mempool shirt. I just saw that.
Yeah.
All right. Cruising along here. One final topic. This was pretty interesting. I saw we're talking here about the utility of names, and I saw John Carvalho talking a little bit about how you can't own a name. And I just see people talking about names a lot today, but what really caught my eye on this is taking Lightning and removing the dependence on HTTPS and potentially bringing, better security and making it so that there's a bit more privacy for Lightning. So what exactly is this for the non-technical, and like what does this mean on a technical level for Lightning?
So this is actually I don't believe this is has anything to do with Lightning. I think this is purely from like an on-chain perspective, because of the ways that Lightning Address helps solve some of those user the experience of having to copy and paste invoices all over the place. This is trying to do a similar solution for kind of Bitcoin on-chain with on-chain addresses, and being able to, if you can kind of host this service that can, you know, resolve like a Lightning address looking thing to, you know, an on-chain address or so forth, would be really nice to be able to make it more human readable, and you know, maybe potentially offer some privacy preserving things. John Carvalho's point is like, you know, things like DNS and domains and things like that you don't really own. There's like kind of, you know, registrars and all of these kinds of bodies that oversee it, which, like, you know, there's points to it. I think that ultimately that's a whole kind of mess to get into, but ultimately this is trying to make it really a nice experience for Bitcoin layer 1 as well as Lightning, as we've seen, you know, Lightning address being a very good user experience enhancement. We want to kind of continue pushing that into other areas of Bitcoin and continue to kind of help that proliferate across the ecosystem.
Got it. Cool. So you said like how this is this is used more for on-chain. Like it says for Lightning senders, it adds censorship resistance. Is that because the initial on-chain transaction just has a little more privacy than on all Lightning transactions that happen after the fact?
I'd have to like review the protocol more in depth. I think that there's probably enhancements for both, in that you can just add in a lot of like things like, you know, DNS security and all these kinds of like different kind of PKI enhancements. So you can do a lot of things to enhance the ability for people to have essentially better privacy when you're doing things like Lightning address or an on-chain identifier or anything like that. So branching it from like having sort of like, you know, there's a spectrum of completely custodial providers and having DNS names and all those that they like Wallet of Satoshi provides, and then going into like as far reaching of like, you know, self-hosting it, but not only self-hosting these identifiers, but also having a way of like doing them securely as you're doing like, you know, either invoice sharing or address sharing or anything like that. So it's trying to basically create a better experience for and security and privacy for these kinds of human readable types of sharing.
Good deal. Well, this is very cool. It sounds like the user experience of Bitcoin is improving. What Thunder's sharing, what Matt and it sounds like T-Bass are proposing here. But to kind of wrap up, what other user experience improvements do you think we're going to be seeing on just Bitcoin and Lightning over the next 11 months, 12 or 10 to 11 months to wrap up the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, we talked about like BitVM and things like that last session, which I know Super Testnet had a conversation in a Twitter space with the founder of the Serio or whatever that company was that kind of launched the first like ZK rollups on Bitcoin. I don't know how that ended. I haven't watched that one yet. But ultimately, I think that'd be an interesting one to go and watch if you're looking for more education on that. So I think that it's going to be really interesting as we see things like BitVM and what that's going to enable. We have Taproot assets, which have been on chain for a little while. That's going to be coming to Lightning very soon. Those are probably more, you know, protocol level things than user experience things, but I think ultimately we're starting to really, it seems good that we're starting to focus on a lot more user experience as an ecosystem and we're not ignoring protocol level improvements, but there's kind of this glaring issue of how do we help, you know, the user experience improve. And I think that there's a lot of people trying to solve stuff around that.
Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, we appreciate everyone tuning in this week. As always, about 20, 25 minutes covering some of the things that have been on our eyes over the last week. If there's anything you want to see discussed, please feel free to share. And we have the chat open where we can see it and showcase it during the show, and we'll respond. So feel free to chat. And Graham, thanks again for joining, and we'll see everyone next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.